In this video, we're going to be taking a look at exactly how different an original equipment tyre is compared to an aftermarket version, how much work goes into making one, and then actually test the differences between an OE tyre and a non-OE tyre in the same pattern, the same size, on the same vehicle, on the same track, to see if the theory actually matches the results. What's driven this video? Well, apart from all your questions asking whether OE tyres are actually worth it or whether you should just buy aftermarket, around a month ago I was fortunate enough to drive the new G80 M3 on the UK press launch. This excited me for two reasons. Firstly, I'm a big M3 fan, having owned several myself, and secondly, this is the first ever M3 to come fitted with the Michelin Pilot Sport 4S, not the Pilot Super Sport. Immediately driving the car, I felt sure the 4S was no ordinary 4S because it felt quicker to steer, stiffer, and seemed to give you more feedback, all things I've always wanted from the 4S. To find out whether this was just the car or whether the tyre was in fact different, I dropped Michelin an email and they kindly invited me out to their facility in France to interview one of the designers and to actually test the differences myself. Before driving the two sets of tyres, I interviewed the lead developer of the new star-marked Pilot Sport 4S, Pierre Chapoux, and what I thought was going to be a 5-minute chat turned out to be over an hour of awesome tyre geeking. The natural first question is, what are some of the differences BMW want from the tyre? What characteristics are they demanding? Pierre said BMW M are a very technical OEM to work with, and while they work on every aspect of the car and tyre's performance, their key goals revolve around dry grip, maximum dry grip, precise steering with quick reaction at small steering angles, all things I really love. While this can come at the expense of wet performance, it's very important to BMW that the balance and the drivability of the car isn't lost in the wet. But it's fair to say that the overall focus on the OE tyre is dry performance, perhaps prompted by a famous German racetrack, we all know the one. As for the other aspects of the tyre, such as comfort and noise, well, the PS4S, the aftermarket version, is already excellent in noise, excellent in comfort, excellent in rolling resistance, as I've proven in my own test, so the two tyres are very similar. So the next question is the obvious one. What are the actual differences between the two tyres? The compound is the biggest difference, as with the OE tyre, you can design exactly what BMW want instead of having to cater to every vehicle. The aftermarket tyre has a two-compound design, with what Michelin calls black carbon plus on the outer shoulder for driving grip and handling, and a high silica compound on the rest of the tyre, which is excellent for many things such as wet grip, rolling resistance and good mileage. The BMW specification front tyre has not two, but four compounds. Firstly, the black carbon compound they use is the black carbon compound, not the plus, the plus plus plus. This compound is more like the compound from the Cup 2, I've been told, rather than the 4S. Exciting. As this compound is more grippy, but can have higher wear, this tyre gets another strip of special compound on the shoulder to improve wear characteristics, especially on track when pushing hard. Like the OE tyre, it then goes back to a silica compound, but a silica compound that's tuned to work better at higher temperatures. Because that still wouldn't meet the BMW M requirement of dry grip and steering precision, Michelin have laid another rib of black carbon plus 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 to give it even more steering speed and dynamics and grip. Fantastic. And then it goes back to the high temperature silica on the inner shoulder for things like wet grip and wear. As for the construction, well, that's all different too. The OE cap ply has the same materials as the aftermarket tyre, but they're laid at a different tension, which changes the contact patch and the speed at which the tyre reacts. The belting is actually tighter in the centre to improve that steering. To me, that is crazy levels of precision, just tightening the belting here. The steel belting underneath the cap ply we've just talked about has also changed. It's wavy instead of flat, which means the steel belt goes into the tread a little bit more, further improving the rigidity of the tyre to give it even more steering precision. Can you see where this theme's going? Naturally, the sidewall rigidity is also tuned, as the M3 puts a lot of demand on its front axle, thanks to the engine being at the front and a lot of cornering force, and Michelin have also tuned the groove depths, the groove locations and the groove widths to further improve things. So how long did all these changes take? Michelin and BMW started the PS4S project in 2017, and the first production tyre was made in mid-2020. That's 2.5 years of development for this tyre, over this tyre. There were 8 test loops with BMW in total, with 30 different versions of the PS4S for each axle, and the tyres were tested at Miramas in France, Nürburgring in Germany, shock, Idiada in Spain, here at Le Doux in France, Aschim in Germany, which is an impressive array of tracks. One final note the development engineer said, This generation of BMW xDrive, this is the rear-wheel drive car, but the xDrive is coming and it's the same tyres for the xDrive as well as the rear-wheel drive version. This version of xDrive is a little bit more sensitive than maybe some of the other four-wheel drive systems about the overall tyre size diameter. So that's worth keeping in mind when you're trying to decide to stick with the OE tyre or throw on an aftermarket tyre. Now, having learned all that theory, let's find out how much difference it actually makes on track. Okay, now I've said all that, I better be able to feel some differences, otherwise I'm just retiring is what I do. And let me turn traction control off. Right, starting with the 4S, the non-Star Mark 4S. You know what? It feels like a 4S. There's a shock. Normally I guard you from all the really boring bits of tyre testing, but we looked at lots of different things like linearity of the steering speed, how the tyre responds. You just drive in a straight line and do that and see how the car reacts. And on the 4S, you can feel it's not quite harmonious between the two axles. That means when you're doing that, the front moves a little bit before the rear. So it's kind of like the front turns, there's a slight delay on the steering, as I've moaned so many times. Sorry Michelin, because I know some of you guys will be watching, but the 4S to me isn't the best, the most precise tyre on the market in that segment. And here you feel that little bit of delay again, but then the rear comes a little bit afterwards. So there's just some imbalance between the axle. I don't think anyone would really notice this if they just fit these to the car. It was the first time driving the car, but this is what we're looking for. As for the levels of grip and lap time, the grip is amazing. No one's going to be unhappy with this tyre. You can push and push and push. It's the 4S. It has lots of grip in the dry. And this track is really fast and really brave. But here, 100 metre mark, over 200 kilometers an hour, brake, no problem. But then, you can hear it mid-corner, understeer. And the understeer is something I really dislike, and I know something BMW dislike as well. So let's see if it changes. But the tyre, it's not a bad tyre, it's still playful if it wants to be. So what it is when it does start sliding, there's a lot of time to recover. But you can just lean on the front axle, and then it's a safe balance. Understeer primary balance, it builds into understeer pretty quickly, but the grip is immense. Impressive, mega impressive tyre, and this isn't my fastest lap. This was a 135, so I was chatting to you. But I'm pretty sure my fastest lap was a 112. But like I say, if you want to play with it, just stomp on the throttle and drift it. I mean, that's part of the joy of an M car, right? The 4S, the non-OE 4S, I mean, it still feels great. It's just got that, what I would call typical 4S vagueness that isn't my favourite thing in the world. So, Michelin engineers, let's see how good a job you have done over the 2 years and all those development cycles. Let's see if there is a difference with the Star Mark tyre. Okay, so I've literally just driven from the garage to the track, which is a straight line, and it hasn't felt that much different. But will the first direct steering response feel better? Like it's loading up a bit better. Okay. That slight delay, it's not going to translate well on camera, so you'll have to trust my words, but that slight delay where it feels like the front end's settling, I mean, it's reacting quicker, and then that second movement of the rear of the car, the rear axle, okay, 100, 110, yeah, it's just working as one car. It's like the front and the rear have become more attached, which is wonderful. Wonderful. This is sexy. I like this. The steering slightly sharper, feels a similar weight. It just feels more predictable. You can be quite a bit more precise. Right, let's push. Brakes. Brakes, good. Turn in, sharper front end. That understeer is gone. I've got a bit more balance, a bit more oversteer. That's because I can just control the front end a little bit more. Oh, this feels darty. The grip is immense. It feels more like a track tyre. You can really feel that different compound. Yeah, the front end just goes where you want it to without that nasty sort of hesitation. I don't want to use the word nasty because the non-Star 4S is still a very good tyre, but at this level with this vehicle, you want the OE tyre. Holy smoke. Yeah, no understeer. In fact, there was a little bit of over there. This is gorgeous. .111.2 first lap with a couple of mistakes, so I've gained over a second. But forget the time, it's the enjoyment. The car will do what you want it to do. You don't have to worry about pesky understeer even. Now you can just go exactly where you want. This is beautiful. The braking is direct, the steering, but it's the balance that you really notice. The car's just working better. I know this sounds like a freaking advert for Michelin OE tyres or any OE tyres. It sounds like I'm just towing the corporate line, but I'm not. Not being paid a penny to be here or make this. Another 111. Right, I'm gonna let the car cool. That's an enjoyable experience. If you told me that was the PS5S, I'd be over the moon. That's everything I want from the Pilot Sport 4S in a tyre, but it's for this car. Michelin, please make this for everyone, for everything. This is great. And I know there's going to be some trade-offs in the wet, which the aftermarket can't do. The aftermarket tyre has to focus on wet as well, because that's one of the key criteria in magazine tests. But wow, as a dry handling change, that's magical. Right, as you'll all want to know, when I stopped speaking and could really concentrate on driving, the PS4S, the non-star marked, 72.4, 72.5, 72.5. The star marked PS4S, 70.5, 70.8, 70.6. 2 seconds. 2 seconds in a lap. But I think I said, forget the lap time. It's this, it's the way everything works together. I mean, I knew there were a lot of differences in certain OE tyres. Porsche specifically, they have to add a load of like strengthening to the rear axle tyre because of where the engine is. But I didn't think for a, I mean, it's a front engine rear wheel drive saloon. It's not that unique, but the OE tyre, Michelin, just sell this, please, in some other size. Everything you've done to this, just do it, call it the PS4S Tyre Reviews Edition and sell it, and I'll buy it, and I'm sure some of you guys will. Wet handling, if you can't tell, it's quite low grip here, and that's pretty sideways. If I had the M Drift Analyzer on, I'd get a lot of points for that. I've been out on the aftermarket tyre, the non-star mark tyre, and found my balance, and I'm now on the star mark tyre. I did a 97.6 lap on the aftermarket tyre. You know what, the tyre felt great. I'm not gonna lie, this much power and in this kind of grip conditions, the car's a bit of a handful because it's rear wheel drive only, but the tyre was predictable. You could get a little bit of understeer, steady state throttle if you were really carefully, that's where it would naturally go. Any amount of throttle would cause oversteer, but once the tyre was sliding, it gripped well. Like it wasn't, it kind of had a linear amount of grip, so it was very easy to recover. You could just play with the car. Now on this star mark tyre, as Michelin promised, it feels very much like the aftermarket tyre. The noticeably dartier front end in the dry does translate to wet, which I think makes it slightly easier to place. But what I am noticing on this is I'm getting a bit more aquaplaning, which is perhaps causing just a touch more oversteer. But oh, it's a lovely tyre to drive on. There does feel like there's some, that might just be a slightly less grip. What I'm going to do is stop all this sideways shenanigans, because you have to go neat and tidy to get a good lap time around here. Turn the camera off and then report back my findings. Okay, so it's 97.6 for the aftermarket tyre, 99.3 for the OE tyre. So what you gain in the dry, you lose a bit in the wet. But as Michelin have promised, It's very much the same tyre in terms of balance. The only difference is, I'd say the grip levels are closer than the times would represent. It's just a bit too much aquaplaning around here, and that's where there's standing water here that's deep. And we're talking deep puddle levels of water, not a slightly wet road. So I think on a slightly wet road, there wouldn't be that much in it. Whoa, that's so much fun. I mean, I'm gonna turn the analyzer on and see if I can score something high. But anyway, back to the studio. No, let's just go back to me and then talk about the results of this test. I know this video is already way longer than intended. Just hear me out for a little bit more. I just got too excited with all the glorious geeky tyre details. To sum up, yes, OE tyres are vastly different from aftermarket tyres. Admittedly, in some cases, the changes aren't going to be this big. But if you drive a high performance car and you care about driving enjoyment, I'm freaking sold on OE tyres, way more than I thought I was going to be at the start of this test. The work BMW and Michelin have done for the new M3 and M4 is spectacular. And finally, I know I've been caught up in how amazing this is in dry and the steering position, but let's not forget that the aftermarket version of the PS4S is the tyre we all know and love. It's been in something like 10 tyre tests and won 8 of them and comes second in 2, I think. This is one of the most rounded aftermarket ultra high performance tyres you can buy, and I can't wait to see what Michelin are going to do with the 5 and 5S, because I know some of this technology is going to end up in the successor to this. Super exciting. As always, if you've enjoyed this video, feel free to give it a thumbs up. Any questions, please do ask below. And as always, safe motoring.